Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar. My name is Nicole Schönenberger, and I am a research associate of the Swiss Patient Safety Foundation. We are delighted to have you here as part of our Patient Safety Awareness Week 2025, which runs under the slogan, Keeping an Eye on Risks, Child's Play. The goal of this national campaign is to engage, inspire, and empower individuals and organizations to make a positive impact in patient safety. We would like to thank the Federal Quality Commission for funding the Patient Safety Awareness Week. In today's webinar, we will be exploring the topic When Standard Dosing Fails, Pediatric Insights, Broader Implications. We have prepared an exciting program, and we warmly encourage you to participate actively by asking questions and sharing your thoughts during the discussion at the end of the presentation via the Q&A section. Before we start, just a few technical notes. For one, please be aware that the webinar is being recorded. Unfortunately, due to technical problems, we are unable to provide the automatic translation of live subtitles for this webinar, as previously announced. The webinar will therefore take place exclusively in English original audio. We apologize for the inconvenience and thank you for your understanding. One very important note, if you have any technical questions, please use the chat function. For all content-related questions, for example, questions for the speaker or for the discussion, please use the Q&A section. This will be reviewed by me and by our speakers during the discussion part of today's session. Depending on your team's language settings, this section may appear as F&A in German, Q&R in French, or D&R in Italian. So once again, chat for technical questions only, Q&A for all content-related questions. So now let's begin. Today's webinar agenda is as follows. We will start with a presentation by Professor Christoph Berger, followed by an expert discussion with two other experts, Dr. Andrea Burch and PD Dr. Constanze Rémi, whom I will introduce after Professor Berger's presentation. Please feel free to submit your questions at any time via the Q&A. We will try to address them during the discussion. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Professor Christoph Berger, who will give the presentation. He is an FMH certified specialist in pediatrics and infectious diseases, chief physician of the Department of Infectious Diseases and Hospital Hygiene, and deputy director of the medical clinic at the University Children's Hospital Zurich. He also serves as associate professor of pediatric infectious diseases at the University of Zurich. We have invited Professor Berger today because of his more than 10 years of commitment to a national database for pediatric drug dosage recommendations, particularly through his work over the past 8 years with the Swiss Pet Dose Association, and therefore his expertise in pediatric drug dosing. He is a founding member and currently serves as president of Swiss Pet Dose, which is dedicated to developing and publishing nationally harmonized drug dosages for children. Today's presentation is entitled Efficacy and Safety in Drug Dosing for Children. Professor Berger, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the invitation and the possibility to give my thoughts and my view on this important topic. And I would welcome all that have the time and the possibility to join this presentation and the following discussion. I'm looking forward to your questions. So efficacy and safety in drug dosing for children. My first slide is, and this is very important from the beginning to the end, children are not small adults. I will come back to that several times during the following presentation. If we look at the so-called developmental pharmacology, this may illustrate why. There is a huge impact on pharmacokinetic steps with respect to the development of the child, of the growing child. And this includes absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. And if we just consider that the gastric pH is not as low in neonates, and that the intestinal transit time is shorter in infants than in older children or in adults, this impacts pharmacokinetic. The same is for distribution. We have a much higher amount of body water, extracellular fluid in infants than in older children and adults. Metabolism is immature at birth, and this does not change in the first week of life, but in the first months or first years of life. The drug metabolizing enzyme activity, and this has impact on plasma clearance for liver metabolized and other drugs. And finally, excretion by kidney is the glomerular filtration rate is immature at birth and is not the same in young children than in adults. So these all had impact on drug dosing that we have to respect if we prescribe drugs to children. So drug prescribing in children means that they are not smaller than adults, and as I already mentioned, this has impact on pharmacokinetics. And this is, first of all, different from adults, and it's depending on age group and not only body weight, maybe body surface, but it depends on the age, on the development of the body. So drug dosage finding for children means that it is not only about toxicity, but first it's about efficacy. If we take an adult with 70 kilograms body weight and we have a child with 7 kilograms, it's not just 1/10 of an adult. That doesn't work. In a young, we have to go with dosages per kilogram body weight or surface, but mostly per kilogram body weight. And this is not all we need, because this may be too low for an infant. On the other side, if we go we follow this dosage per kilogram body weight, we will be too high. If we go to a teenager that has 60 kilograms, this is, if we follow the pediatric dosage, you would be higher than in an adult. So we need to respect the age and not only the body weight. We have to check the indication of a drug, of a particular drug. The indication of a drug may be different from the one we have studied and have licensed in adults, because the indication may be different. We have to consider toxicity, the same as efficacy per age group following the development as I explained before. And then the last point, very important in everyday prescriptions, is we have to provide the respective galenic forms. As I already mentioned, if we need the 1/10 of the dosage in an adult, we cannot divide a tablet in tenths, more than in half or maybe a quarter. So we need other galenic forms that allow to adjust, to give the appropriate dosage. This is the first. And the second, we have to provide forms that can be swallowed by children, maybe a suspension or a syrup. So these are critical prerequisites for age-based drug dosage recommendations for children. If we now go to the studies, you all know about clinical trials and what we need for clinical trials to dosage finding primarily in adults, but also in children. There are these classical phases, 1, 2, 3, and then the review and the phase 4. And you know that, and this is a prerequisite for a licensing at the end. And if you now followed my thoughts, then we would need these clinical trials for each age group. This would require a lot of children, is very difficult. We have young children, we have ethical questions, we have many study groups, and we have difficult blood sampling in young children, volume and technical as well. And we have the requirement of different galenic forms. They are often not primarily studied, many of those, if we follow just adult studies. So this would be different in pediatric studies. So it's several times not available. We have to be aware whether these other galenic forms are, what is the bioavailability and the stability of these forms, and many questions more. If we take that together, it's evident that this is a small market and very complicated to do these studies. And this is the reason why they have not been done and are not done. They are done more than in earlier years, but they are not done in most cases. So most drugs are not studied by the company in children, and in consequence, there is no label by the licensing authority. But we have these drugs, and we treat children because we have these drugs, and the question is, how do we dose these drugs? And this is an old study, but still valid. It's still similar today from Switzerland, and it shows in a pediatric university hospital, in this case from Lausanne, that many dosages are not based on the label. You see there that more than a quarter is not in the label, and another quarter is not licensed. And let me just explain you what this means. An off-label use is prescribing a medication for a condition not described in the label approved by Swissmedic in Switzerland. So this is not authorized by the national authority, and because the process has not been performed, it's not possible. And we have not a positive assessment based on scientific evidence for efficacy and safety. So this is what is required for adults primarily. And we would hope it would be more available for children as well. If we have no label, do we have unanticipated risk? Maybe, because there are not as many data as in adults. It's the responsibility of the prescribing physician or the medical professional. The patient has to be informed, and the parents as well. If we go to children, and the health insurance coverage is an open question, because there is no licensing. Unlicensed use, this means that we have maybe a label for adults, but we have not the galenic formulations, making it possible to administer these drugs to children. Now I will just show you this study that Romy Thielen did, in a very important study. She just looked at the drug information sheets, the Fachinformation we have in Switzerland in the compendium. And she screened by text and got these results. And the main finding was that 55% of brand name drugs are authorized, and on the other side, 45% are not for use in children. And if you look at the graph, this is most are not authorized, is 45%. And for those that are authorized, you see that many are not in newborns. In the left half is always given the youngest age group with authorization. So this means we have not many authorizations, including preterm newborns, term newborns, and infants, and then we have more if we go to older children and adolescents. So in this increasing age, what does this mean? We have not a clear indication, and we have also no clear contraindication. We have evidence-based pediatric data that are present in only 1/3 of these product characteristics. What does it mean? In the absence of this information, the professionals prescribing drugs for children, they need to consult other sources providing evidence and expert-based off-label dosing recommendations. And this is not only a Swiss problem. This is a worldwide problem. And I show you here some statements based on the American Academy of Pediatric Policy statement, and most recently last week from the Boston Children's Hospital from the website. We have regulations and incentives to increase pediatric drug research in the last 20 years for authorities and pharmaceutical companies, but there is still a lot to do. So in fact, today, we have about 50% of medication labels that have any guidance for providers on the drugs used in children. They do not have that. And if you go to a tertiary hospital where you have academic medical center, this is even more, it's 60 to up to 80%. So we have a lot of off-label use, unlicensed use, and a minority of approved drug prescriptions. And this is not because this is dangerous or it's experimental or should be prohibited. It's just a problem that we do not have the data that are required for an authority to license the use of these drugs in these groups. What does it mean? And just allow me to state this title: Children deserve medicines and dosages adapted to their needs. Because this is really a patient safety issue. We need effective treatment. We should prevent toxicity. We need updated evidence-based recommendations that are available in an emergency. You cannot start searching dosages if you have a child in your emergency room. You have to know where you can check that and where you can get that. So we have to look beyond the label for prescription guidance in pediatrics. How do we do that? The providers must rely on their best judgment and best evidence. This means what are possible sources for this evidence: peer-reviewed literature, consensus statements, policy statements, and practice guidelines. And you can also include reviews, meta-analysis, and Cochrane collaboration, for example. So providers should rely on their own and their colleagues' expertise, as well as on any expert opinions and trial data they can access. And this is exactly the goal. What was the incentive to build up such a database in Switzerland? What we have now, and I will explain that to you in the next few slides, we have an independent expert consensus-based dosage recommendation in Switzerland. Just be aware that for all the label dosages, there is independent authority licensing these dosages. And now we have less data, less evidence, and we need really independent experts to provide or to define such best possible dosages on a consensus. This is to increase efficacy and prevent toxicity of drug prescription and administration in children. And now we have this Heilmittelgesetz. And this is just the law in Switzerland introduced in 2018, this particular article here. And this was to improve safety in the use of medicinal products in pediatrics, and is given by the Federal Council of Switzerland to establish such a database based on harmonized expert opinion. And this is the primary intention to start this database. But the children are not the only one, and when we can discuss at the end of my presentation what are other patient groups that had this need as well. Maybe pregnant women, maybe very senior people, maybe palliative care people, and many more. So what we started based on this new law article, we started this Swiss database funded by the Federal Office of Public Health, this Swiss PETOS database. We founded an association, and this is consists of the 8 large children's hospitals in Switzerland and the Society of the Pediatricians and the Society of the Hospital Pharmacists all together. And the task was just to provide such a database with these dosages. And how do we get there? This dosage harmonies is found, as I will explain to you in the next slide, by this harmonization process. And this is standardized, and this is also documented. And this is in the lead of these 8 children's hospitals in Switzerland. How we do that? How do we do that? We have these experts from the 8 children's hospitals, and we try to find national expert consensus in this harmonization process, and we do this in an online tool to discuss the cases, and to do at the end we define this consensus dosage recommendation. Let me guide you through that slide. If there is a dosage request on in the left upper part, then the Swiss pet dose harmonization specialist goes to these 8 hospitals, ask the pharmacist, how do you use for this indication this drug for a long age? We collect these 8 data sets from internal dosing guidelines, make a literature review, and based on these 8 dosages that are currently given, and they are different in the 8 hospitals mostly, and the literature review, we make a unique dosage suggestion for all. And this suggestion goes in the harmonization tool and is there discussed among these 8 experts, one of each hospital, for general pediatricians, for infectious diseases, and for neonatology separately in 3 groups. And then, if there is a dissent, we make a second round or a third round to get the consensus, and at the end we have a nationally harmonized dosage recommendation, and this is then published, will be used with the same dosage in all the 8 hospitals, and is published in this database for all medical professionals and for the hospitals that can have an access to XML files that are updated every month or every 3 months. I give you an example for this. Ibuprofen, very frequently used. And this is just a screenshot from the Fachinformation, from the product information. And you see there 20 to 30 milligram per kilogram body weight in 3 to 4 doses. So you have a huge range. If you go from 4 times 5 to 3 times 10, and it's contraindicated for infants younger than 6 months and children less than 5 kilograms. So why? What we thought about that, and what adverse gastrointestinal effects, risk of renal failure, increased risk of necrotizing ascites is reported in the literature, it's very rare, and Reye syndrome is even more rare. But this may be the concern. So we did a literature search, and we found 2 studies. That I show you these 2. One about efficacy and safety. And they studied this, the use of ibuprofen for short-term use for pain relief or to decrease the fever. In a huge population, as a literature review, short time, and the recommended dose is 5 to 10 milligrams per kilogram, 3 to 4 times a day. So this is just, you can use this as well, also in children younger than 6 months, 3 to 6 months. Then the adverse events of ibuprofen in infants. This is a huge study with 2 cohorts. They compared, do you find more side effects in those younger compared to those 6 to 12 months of age? And no, there was no difference. And the second part of the study, do we have more adverse events in infants younger than 6 months if they compared to paracetamol? And yes, there is a little bit more, but this is not dangerous if you go for only less than 3 days. Then we put this in the tool, and we discussed it among the experts, and we documented the discussion, and the harmonization is successful. And this is the conclusion we had. On the left side, we have a dose that is 5 to 7.5 milligram per kilogram per dose from 3 months of age. Or you can give it 3 times daily, then it is 7.5 to 10 milligrams. And if we have no concerns for the use in children 3 to 6 months of age. And this is more or less in line with the EMA assessment, with the licensed recommendation in the UK, and with the BNF dosage recommendation from as well. We have this, and this was just one example, and we did a lot of these harmonizations in the last almost 8 years. And we have this documented harmonization process based on current scientific literature and expert consensus, and we update this from every few months. And you see there we have harmonized dosage recommendation for children, more than 700 for, concerning about 240 substances. So for many of those, we have more than one recommendation. So there we are. And we continue those that are most often used in the hospitals, and we go to more and more rare dosage requests. So you can access that. This is available for medical professionals. You can go by this link that I show you there. You will know that, and you have to self-identify. You have to identify yourself as a medical professional. Then you can go and use search by substance, not by product, and then you choose the substance and the indication, and then you got what you are looking for, and at the end we provide you the references on which this recommendation is based. We allow you and we ask you to get a feedback if you have concerns. And we provide you products that are available in Switzerland for this active substance. You can access to this. I can go fast now because you can see that or you can try that. You have this link. This is available to medical professionals by self-identification. The institutions can ask for a free software integration for an XML file, and if we agree to give you that, you will get any update we make several times a year. So you have the therapeutic recommendations for children based on evidence, independent experts, and customized to Switzerland. You can follow this link that I showed you. You can go by the QR code you see there, and then you can install that as your favorite icon on your home screen if you send that to your screen. You can just try. It's not difficult. And then you have a link to the current version of the database. We have we want that this is really available to all those that have to provide dosage to define dosages and to prescribe drugs to children. And this is integrated in HCI solutions in the compendium in Switzerland, if you go there. And you can even use a scanner, and you go to the code there, and you go to a mobile phone, and you just switch your camera on, and then you can get to the Swiss Pet Dose dosage recommendation. So where are we now? If we look at our database visitors visiting our website, they increase steadily. We have now over 100,000, 115,000 last year website clicks. And this is in addition to many hospital and institutions that receive regularly the XML file. They do not go to the website, but because they have the XML file, so it's even much more. And this dosage recommendations are implemented in all Swiss A clinics, children clinics, and in many hospitals more. And we did search there, and we evaluated which other hospitals are using that belong not to these 8 clinics, use this dosage, this database, and you see there on the graph on the bottom in the right that it is increased from 17 to 2023. So this is how it is used, and there is also a survey among pharmacies, and many pharmacies know Swiss Pet Dose, and 2 of 3 in 21 used Swiss Pet Dose in this way. So where are we now? This is an interprofessional association, as I explained to you, with essential support by College A clinics. Are these 8 clinics in Switzerland, and is also supported by the Swiss Pediatric Society. Until the end of this year, we are financed through the Federal Office of Public Health. This will end by the end of the year because they have a financial cut, despite this law article. And we have stakeholder actions ongoing for future financing, and we have just to bridge the next 2 years, and I can tell you we can do that, but it's narrow. It's a very narrow budget just to survive on the smallest fire we can, and we to continue as we did so far. Based on that we can have updated the dosage recommendations and can add some more, it would need around 200,000 Swiss francs a year. We promise that by the end of this year, this database will not shut down. These dosages are continuously available to all healthcare professionals in 26. Then on an own database, no longer the one paid by the federal office. And we are doing everything to continue and are looking forward and evaluating all funding opportunities that we can provide these dosage recommendations to the children. Let me summarize where I am, where we are, and what I try to explain to you. What means efficacy and safety in drug dosing for children? We have to respect that children are not small adults, and this has an impact on pharmacokinetics. This has impact on drug dosage finding for reaching and optimal efficacy and minimal toxicity, and we have to respect that where we need which galenic forms for children. We have to look beyond the label for prescription guidance, because we have often an off-label situation, and we have not sufficient information in the product information for children. Younger children and older children, that's not precise enough for what we need. Drug prescribers for children need sources for evidence and expert-based recommendations. And Swiss Pet Dose tries to offer just that, providing dosage recommendations for children to medical professionals so far for free, and we give everything to provide that for free in future. This is evidence and independent national expert consensus based. It's interprofessional and accepted, as I showed you, and we regularly update these dosage recommendations, and we think they are easily available, and we try to continue. This is really a significant contribution to improve medication safety in children, to allow that children deserve the medicines and dosages adapted to their needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Berger, for this very clear and important presentation. You have clearly shown us that children are not small adults, and that standard dosing often fails due to differences in pharmacokinetics, formulations, and the lack of sufficient studies. You have also underlined the importance of national expert consensus and databases such as Swiss Pet Dose, which provide clinicians with reliable and harmonized dosing recommendations. And this brings us directly to our discussion. In the next minutes, we would like to broaden the perspective and look at related challenges in other vulnerable patient groups. So together with our expert from pediatrics, palliative medicine, and perinatal pharmacology, we will explore where standard dosing reaches its limits and what can be done to improve efficacy and safety. Please remember, you can send in your questions via the Q&A at any time. So let me introduce our other two experts. Our first discussion expert is PD Dr. Constanze Rémi, a clinical pharmacist from Munich, Germany. Since 2003, she has worked in the Department of Palliative Medicine at LMU University Hospital in Munich. In 2021, she became head of the Center for Excellence in Palliative Pharmacy Care, which provides a national drug information service for healthcare professionals. More information can be found under www.arzneimittel-palliativ.de. She also holds a Master of Science in Palliative Care from King's College London. In addition to her clinical work as a ward pharmacist, she is actively involved in research on medication safety in palliative care, particularly in relation to off-label use. Thank you very much for being here, Dr. Rémi. And our third discussion expert is Dr. Andrea Burch. She is a federally certified pharmacist with an FBH in clinical pharmacy. Since 2014, she has been a board member and since 2025, co-president of the Swiss Academy for Perinatal Pharmacology, or SAP. She is the head of hospital pharmacy at the University Hospital Zurich, known as Zurich Pharm AG. She also lectures at the University of Basel and serves as a subject coordinator at ETH Zurich. Her research focuses on various aspects of outpatient parenteral antimicrobial therapy, short OPAT, including the continuous infusion of glycopeptides and beta-lactam antibiotics. Thank you very much for joining us today, Dr. Burch. So let's start our discussion. Professor Berger, you showed how evidence gaps in pediatrics required harmonized, expert-based recommendations. So to open the discussion, I would like to take a step back and ask both of you, Dr. Burch and Dr. Rémi, could you briefly describe your patient groups and the specific challenges you face in safe medication dosing? Where do you see similarities and where do you see important differences compared to pediatrics?
Should I start?
Yes, please, go ahead.
So in palliative care, the big challenge is that as in pediatrics, we have a very heterogeneous patient collective. So there's not one type of palliative care patient, but there's a variety of diseases, comorbidities, age groups. So it's very heterogeneous, our patient population. And as in pediatrics, we have to manage a lot of off-label drug use because most of the drugs we regularly use in palliative care are not labeled for the indications or the routes of administration that we need in palliative care, which is usually the symptom control for symptoms like pain, nausea, vomiting, dyspnea at the end of life. And the big challenge is that in our patient group, it can be expected that the patient status gets worse. Our patients eventually will die in the near future. So it's hard to tell if a patient, this patient status gets worse, it's due to a drug or due to the disease progress. And again, similar, I guess, to pediatrics is that research in the palliative care population is very challenging due to different methodological challenges. On the other hand, I think despite the huge heterogeneity of our patient population, we are lucky that we don't have this big variety. We have some variety, of course, but not the big variety of variants to metabolism, pharmacokinetics, as you do have in the pediatric patient population. And so our challenges are different. There are many similarities, but also some aspects that are clearly much easier, I think.
Thank you very much. Andrea Burch, do you want to continue?
Yeah, actually, thank you, Professor Berger, for this presentation. And I really always get a little bit upset if I hear about the financial cut for your database. And I also get upset because actually childhood begins in pregnancy, right? And we really should have a database, a harmonized database, as you showed us, that really starts in pregnancy. So I wrote some keywords down that I heard during your presentation where I really thought this is the same as we, these are the same things or the same challenges that we face in perinatal pharmacology. So you were talking about changing pharmacokinetics so that we have different absorption during a life stage. And actually, this is what we see in pregnancy too. We have changes that that in absorption of drugs, in distribution of drugs, in metabolism. So we do actually know that liver works better during pregnancy, that the kidney works better, that we do have changes in gastric acid, and because of that, other absorption. So I think there are a lot of the similar questions that we have to answer, actually. Another keyword was off-label use. I think this also what you stressed, Professor Rémi, that we do have to apply or prescribe drugs that are not indicated for its use, or that are not, that where there are no trials that showed that it's efficient and that it's safe. So we do not really have, we do not really have drug dosage finding that can that cannot be provided by the normal phases of clinical trials. So I think these are all similarities that that I found during your presentation.
Yes, maybe I can.
Yeah.
No, please go ahead.
A difference. When you were talking, it was always about one individual, right? We are talking about a child, a kid that has to have a drug therapy. And when we talk in perinatal pharmacology about the drug therapy, we always have to think that we have to make the risk-benefit evaluation for two individuals so that we have a optimal drug therapy for the woman, for her disease or comorbidities, also for the fetus or the embryo, or also the newborn, and actually in the end that we have positive outcomes for the woman, for the pregnancy, and for the child. And sometimes this makes it even I do not say more difficult, but it's another aspect that we have to think of.
Yeah, thank you very much for these insights. Because you all talked about off-label use, I would like to take up this topic. So can all of you try to elaborate a bit on how you deal with those dosing uncertainties and this off-label use, also when talking to patients and families, and like what experience have you made in your field? And maybe also Dr. Burch and Dr. Rémi, if there are some resources you can use as a treating physician or a pharmacist or whoever is involved in medication dosing, where we can get reliable information.
Okay, I go ahead.
Yeah.
Off-label use is very common in palliative care, and we have tried different approaches I guess it's a challenge that every one of us will face. We said the patient or the relatives need to be able to give informed consent to therapy, and therefore we would have to explain that it's an off-label use. But at the same time, we have different kinds of off-label use. We have those that are very experimental, and those where a drug is just not labeled for the indication or not for this dosage, but we have a huge body of evidence or many experiences. And we have made the experience that it's not helpful to explain every off-label use to patients and families because it's even more uncertainty if we tell them, okay, it's not licensed, but now provide information, or we get informed consent from the patient or the relatives when it's really experimental for us as well. But as long as it's common off-label use, an off-label use where we say it's really low risk, so not more risk than a drug, the same drug used in an in-label indication, we don't give extra information to the patient. We have, regarding what resources we use, we have comparable approach to Swiss PET dose, I would say, which is the pal-olu.de database, where we look for the best available evidence on drug use. And it's not only regarding dosing, but also regarding indications, regarding route of administration. And based on the best available evidence, we give a therapy recommendation. And this therapy recommendation then goes into a consensus process, which is a two-step Delphi process with experts from Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And after the 2 steps, the recommendation goes into this database and is also freely available, because we say it's so important that healthcare professionals can access the information they need to care for patients free of costs. And this is how we deal with this problem. And we try to get more and more information together on the way. So we just started the database 2 years ago, so we're quite new on the market.
Yeah, actually, you mentioned something that I want to stress. Off-label use means that it's not approved for an age group, or that it's not approved, or the dosing is not approved, but it does not mean that we use a substance that is risky. So it can also, or we always try to use substances where we have a lot of experience, where we have seen that there is no harm for the fetus or for the woman, and this is really important. Actually, also, if we think of off-label use because of the liability for the obstetrician or for the physician that prescribes it, actually, if we can show that there are consensus statements, as you said, Christoph Berger, practice guidelines, peer-reviewed literature, actually we can really say that we do something without harm, or as to our best knowledge. And this aspect is then not the liability, I think, is not really the most important thing anymore. Maybe you as a physician would say something else, Christoph, but we can talk about that. Another aspect is that if we have off-label usage of drugs, then it might not be paid by the insurance. So the woman might go into a pharmacy and the insurance could say that she does not want to pay the drug. That could be an aspect. And I think a lot about it, if you asked, what about communication, or should we tell the patient that it's an off-label use? I think we have really well-informed pregnant women that themselves try to inform themselves, and they will realize that you have a drug that is off-label, or you then have also family or relatives that tell you that this is not licensed for that, it's an off-label. You should be really careful about that. The worst thing is that you get into a pharmacy and the pharmacist tells you something like that it's not, that it's off-label, and that you as a pregnant woman should not take this drug. So I think it's really important in this population to tell the woman that she gets a drug or should take a drug and should adhere to this drug therapy, despite its off-label use. So I think this is a little bit another informed consent is really important. If you can do that, of course, in hospital, you have other situations maybe that are life-threatening, and then it's not really an aspect.
Yes, very interesting. Professor Berger, do you want to take up something about what Dr. Burch said about liability? Is that different from your side as a prescribing physicians? And how do you do that communications with families and your pediatric patients? Is that similar as in palliative care or more similar than in pregnant women? Would be happy if you could elaborate a bit on this.
I mean, yes, thank you. Yes, that's very important, and it's impressive. It's some issues are different, and some issues are that is the same. If we just realize that almost half, 1/3 or a half of these dosage recommendations are off-label. I mean, we cannot go for every prescription to the parents and tell them and so. So this is really, this has to be realized. If you treat a child, maybe if a child with the parents comes into the hospital, you can explain that in general. And then if you go in a private practice in outpatient setting, I don't know how this is done, but probably it's just you have to explain, and you have to explain that it is like that. And the most important thing is we have to be aware that it is not more risky to use off-label prescription than a label prescription. Then several times these labels are very old. And we do not follow the prescription in the label. This is difficult what I say now, but this is the label is only updated if the company goes to the licensing authority and says we have an update. And so this is, we have to make aware that this label is not just, it has been studied and it has been licensed, and it has the reimbursement potential, and this is another hurdle. But I think it's very important to say that we do not have the label does not mean that it is experimental or dangerous, but we have to explain that it is another situation. It's not possible to expect a label.
And what I think is, what I would like to add to both of you regarding the risk, I think you both work in areas where risk has something more abstract to it, or a very abstract part, because you will have a longer period of potential outcomes where no one knows whether they are related to the use of a drug or unrelated to it. And that makes this whole process of off-label drug use in perinatal and as well in pediatrics much more or difficult in another way than in palliative care.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Mm-hmm. This would also be a question from my side to you, Professor Rémi. Do you get the feeling sometimes that professionals give you the impression that treatment can be less careful in palliative medicine or in this life phase than in others, so that it doesn't really matter what we do anymore? So what do you answer then?
It's usually it's not, it doesn't really matter. It's more phrased in a way, yeah, but those risks are not relevant to our patients anymore. And I always try to respond to such comments in a way that I explain. Yeah, but I see it clearly differently, because if it's just a matter of changing a dose or a drug to make a patient better, then he or she should get this change, even if the patient just have a prognosis of a few days left. So if we have to balance risks, potential risks and potential benefits of a drug use in a patient, we have to be aware of the potential risk and the potential benefits. Otherwise, it's just a black box. Yeah, so it's difficult. If we really decide knowingly, we know the risk of these drugs, but the patient is suffering so much, so we think that the risks of the drug are way much less than the suffering, then I think it's absolutely okay to have certain risks. But if it's just okay, we know the patient will die anyway in a few days, it's not okay. Is it clear what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you all very much for these very interesting insights. Maybe when looking at time, we need to slowly come to an end, but maybe as a closing question, so for all of you, really, do you have one very short and concrete tip for our audience, or would you wish, or what would you wish for your field in the near future? Maybe all of you, very short.
I think what is really important is interprofessional collaboration, because me as a pharmacist, I can tell you all about the substance and what the theoretical risks could be and the benefits. And actually then in clinics, it's really important also what matters for the patient, what matters for the whole situation. And this interprofessional discussion is really important. And we should really, this is what we also do at the SUP. Our board consists of pharmacists and obstetricians, physicians, to really keep up this discussion. And what we want to have is a harmonized drug database.
Thank you very much.
Do you want? I make the end.
Yes, that's good. Yeah, I agree totally with you. I would wish for a more effective interaction of getting getting real life experiences collected somehow. So really this interaction of data collection, kind of research, if you want to call it like that, from everyday practice to, because there are many drugs, many uses where in fact, there are a lot of experiences out there, but they're just not systemically recorded somewhere. So to find a way to deal with that, and then to have safe funding for initiatives like ours, where we provide valid informations, useful, necessary informations for healthcare providers to ensure really the safe use of medications in vulnerable patient groups.
This is a very important point, and I think this can even make the dosage recommendations much better, because we will not have huge studies, so we can use routine data and we can analyze. We can collect them more and more by data warehouse approaches and things like that. And then we should learn from that. We should use that to compensate for the studies we do not have. I think this is very important. And again, this needs interprofessionality. It needs collaboration. And I think it's very important, because we do not have this hardcore study evidence. We need expert knowledge, and we need experts that work for this. And I'm happy that I have such a network collaborating to this expert group knowledge And this is very important. And my statement is we need to share what we know among experts. We have to care that it is public available for professionals. And we need at the end a financing, and that's not expensive, but important that it's independent and not business oriented. This is at the end if we do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I think, yes, as a take-home message, we can summarize that we need the interprofessional collaboration and that we need to use the routine data and our experts. So with this, we will come to an end of today's webinar, When Standard Dosing Fails, Pediatric Insights, Broader Implications. On behalf of the Swiss Patient Safety Foundation, I would like to sincerely thank our speakers, Professor Berger, Dr. Rémi, and Dr. Burch, for their valuable insights and reflections. Today's webinar has, for me, highlighted how dosing challenges in pediatrics can reveal broader issues that affect patient safety across healthcare and what we can learn from these cases to improve safe medication practices. A warm thank you also goes to all of you, our participants, for joining us and for your engagement with this important topic. We hope today's webinar has provided you with valuable ideas to take back into your daily work. Before we close, just a few short notes. The session is part of the Patient Safety Awareness Week 2025, and we warmly invite you to join the last webinar of this year's series taking place tomorrow on gender medicine with Anne Röhle presenting how gender-sensitive medicine improves healthcare quality and patient safety. Also, don't forget to watch the video lecture, Improving the Healthcare System Through Improved Care for Patients with Sepsis by Professor Lauren Schlappach, available on our website. In addition, we have prepared a quiz series on a variety of topics. Please take part and share them with your colleagues. You will also receive a brief evaluation form by email after the webinar. We kindly ask you to take a few minutes to share your feedback with us. And finally, a recording of this webinar will be uploaded to our website so you can rewatch it or share it with your colleagues. So with this, we will close today's webinar. Thank you once again, and we wish you a successful Patient Safety Awareness Week. Have a nice evening and goodbye.
Bye.